What is up, ladies and gentlemen? It's Pigskin Pete. And you can see my man right here. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Always Irish here with you.
That's right. And this is the much anticipated and probably much anti-anticipated show that myself and John will be doing over here for the at least once a week over the next few months anyway. You know, listen, John, if we like what we're doing and the people like what we're doing, maybe we'll extend it past the summer. Who knows, right?
Yeah, I'm totally open to that. I know I'm going to be a target on here, for some of this, and I'm totally fine with that.
Yeah, that's all right, though. Everyone loves a target. This is called the Always Pigskin Show. Now, I know that's an ingenious name. I mean, you see what we did there, right? You see what we did.
I think it's pretty creative. Give us some credit here. We combine both names and what we talk about. It's perfect. I'm going to give us credit on that.
It is perfect. And it looks like, I thought I set this thing to come on at 9 o'clock. It looks like we have some commenters in here. So this thing might be live right now, John.
If we're live, we're live.
Oh, well, I did not mean for that to happen. I really did, because this is supposed to be simulcast on both of our YouTube channels. So I don't know. This is my first time using StreamYard. That's on me. I did set it to come on at 9 p.m. though. I know.
Maybe it'll do that too.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I don't know. Sorry about that. But I guess since everybody's here, we'll just roll with it. I don't know what to say. We just had this conversation before the thing came on. You got to understand, it's the first show we're working these kinks out, folks. But anyway, welcome to all the live viewers, I guess. And hopefully we'll put on a great show for you. Next time I'll just put it on private, and then we'll go from there. Anyway. So this is called the Always Pigskin Show. It's a play on, obviously, our names, John from Always Irish and Pigskin Pete. And what we're going to do is just come on here and entertain you guys with some pertinent college football news every single week. We'll talk about some things that we want to talk about. We might even talk about some things that you want to talk about. We might even talk about some things that really nobody wants to talk about.
Yeah, I agree with that, but it's necessary.
Yeah. All right. So first things first, we're going to talk some Notre Dame football today, and we've got some things we want to talk about as far as Notre Dame's independence. We've got some things we want to talk about as far as Notre Dame's academic standards and all that sort of thing. But we were just talking about some of the stuff that's in the news, and we don't really want to get too crazy on here. We know people are here for football and not other stuff, so we're going to keep it as light as possible. But there is some things in the news, John.
That's for sure. Yeah. There's a lot in the news. And a lot of it, quite frankly, is not good, but it is what it is. And we just kind of have to address it and deal with it and see how a lot of this stuff plays out. Some of it's football, some of it's life. It's a little bit of everything right now.
Yeah, the crazy thing that came out of college football today, and I guess it's not really college football related anymore, because Jake Fromm is not in college football anymore. He plays for the Bills now. Got drafted by them. What round did he get drafted in? Do you remember?
I don't know. He went to the Bills, right?
Yeah. I
don't even know.
Yeah. It was like the 5th or 6th round or something like that. One of the late rounds. But man, oh man, this first of all, what he said was indefensible. So I think we can both agree on that, right?
Yeah, and you just got to know, by this day and age and this time, you're not going to be able to get away with saying any of this stuff. There's receipts on everything. So even if you think it in the back of your mind or your heart, I'm surprised people still make the mistake to throw it out there and expose themselves like this, quite frankly. So thinking it is wrong and whatever, but putting it out there like that, you would think these guys would be a little smarter than that. And so I'm interested to see what's going to happen. So I heard they might even just cut him and then that'll be it. You're already done. So I don't know.
I'm surprised they haven't already.
Yeah.
Because listen, I guess he put out a tweet, apologizing. I'm not going to read that tweet or anything, but he also said, I guess in that apology that he made, or his attempt at apologizing, was that he met with his teammates and coaches today and apologized to them. So, I don't know. I mean, can you imagine what would it have been like to be a fly on the wall in that room?
Yeah. And the issue is, I wonder how far these apologies go, because it makes you wonder, are you sorry that you thought this enough to say it, or are you sorry that it got blown up and now you feel pressured into apologizing? So that's what I wonder in these locker rooms with these other players and coaches. Do they take that as genuine, or do they think, we already know what you really think? You're just sad that you got called out. Now you're backtracking. That's where I don't know where that situation falls in a locker room.
Yeah, bro, you just got caught. That's all.
Yeah,
that
right.
is.
Right.
So,
And how do you come back from that when most of your teammates are African American, a large percentage in the NFL? I just don't know how receptive they're going to be to him going, oh yeah, by the way, sorry, ooh, I really don't think this, when obviously you did if you said it.
and here's the part of it that I don't really understand. As far as just what he did. I mean, what he did was wrong. I'm not talking about his mindset or his mental state or his beliefs or anything like that. But, we're about the same age, right, John? I mean, you don't have to give me your age if you don't want to.
Yeah, I'm 35.
All right, 35. I'm 39. So we're right. We both grew up in an era when we were teenagers when there was no internet, no smartphones, none of that. But Jake Fromm, he's lived with the internet and smartphones virtually his entire life, as long as he was old enough to own and use one. And the fact that he would go on, even through text message, he didn't post it live on a social media feed or anything. But even the fact that that anybody that you communicate with can just screenshot what you're telling them and blast it all over the internet. You think especially if you're in the public eye, that you would know better than to be saying shit like that to, even if it's somebody you consider to be a friend, because this is the number one group of people in this world that expose other people is their friends when they get in an argument. And they're like, oh, I'm going to expose this guy now. He's messing with the wrong guy. And that sounds like that's what happened here.
Yeah.
And think we know better.
You know what? You know where I think about that a lot? I get a lot of DMs on Twitter. And so that's off the grid because it's not in your timeline getting shot out to everybody. Yeah. I'm even careful what I put in there, because sometimes people will come to you with something that's a little more personal or want a little bit more that you wouldn't put on your timeline. I'm even careful about that, because you got to understand the receipts are going to be out there if you go down that path. And like you said, we're borderline old guys now. All of these guys should know that's how it goes now. You're not going to get away with anything now. So maybe this is all a part of what has to happen to start cleansing some of this stuff out, is for this to keep happening. I don't know, but this is a big mistake. And listen, if you're probably going to be coming into the NFL as a backup, nobody wants to have any drama, have any issues with you. You're coming in there to be a good worker, a backup, do what you're asked to do, and so you're not going to get any leeway on this. It's just a bad look. It's a bad look, and you can't backtrack it. Once it's out there, it's out.
Yeah, bad look is an understatement. I'm seeing some of these comments come in. Crimson Brave 2020 says you'll never see Tua do anything like that. No, you won't. But probably not. You'll never see Trevor Lawrence do something like that either. But then again, I never thought Jake Fromm would be saying something like that either. So you really never know.
Yeah, and you know what is really interesting about it too? I think about this too. It's a little surprising to me that these guys that are playing big time college football, and most of their classmates and teammates come from different backgrounds and areas than them. It's a little surprising to me. I feel like those guys should be less inclined to go down this path because they've been interacting at all these college football camps, high school camps with all these kids of different backgrounds. I'm just a little surprised they're not a little bit more worldly than somebody like who grew up in the sticks in the middle of Illinois, never saw anybody different than them till they went to college, something like that.
Right.
But maybe this is a part of the cleansing, and you got to just start calling this stuff out until people just can't do it.
Yeah, it's been a crazy, it's been a crazy year. It's been a crazy couple of weeks as far as some of the stuff goes. You saw what happened. We won't even talk about the Drew Brees thing because I don't even want to get into that. But just it's sort of in the same sort of line as what we're talking about. So this just a lot. I mean, this is going to be a crazy NFL season. It seems like there's going to be a lot of players And I don't know how this will translate to college football either. I mean, we only know it from these NFL stories, but nothing kills a winning season or a Super Bowl run more than a fractured locker room. So
yeah, you know what? New Orleans has problems now. They already have issues, and I've heard it's kind of ugly behind the scenes. A lot of guys are furious, totally justified. I get that. And the other issue is, look at New Orleans just as New Orleans, the area, okay, and all they've been through over the years, and the demographics and all that. This is an especially not good look down in New Orleans. And so it's an interesting dichotomy, because you got this Hall of Fame guy everybody seems to like and respect. Now you throw this in there. It's changing times. I think that's what we're dealing with all this, and everything's come to a head now. And maybe you just think this is maybe a fulcrum or a turning point towards something better, maybe. But New Orleans, this is going to be an issue. This is going to be tough. It's going to follow him now.
Yeah, it's going to be an underlying storyline throughout the entire season. I hope you don't see anything going on like this in college football, but it's probably pretty much inevitable at this point. So now we'll transition into college football a little bit, and we'll go through one more sort of newsworthy story before you start talking about Notre Dame. So I had my show last night, and I spoke a little bit about this. With all of the teams, or pretty much all the teams, are coming back on campus right now to start their practices and getting back into class and everything. Is Notre Dame back on campus yet?
I don't think they are yet, but they're going to be very, very soon. That's the plan.
Okay. So there's several schools reporting that they have positive test results for one or more players. I think Oklahoma State had 3. Alabama's reported to have 5 or more. I know Marshall's had a few, and I'm assuming we're going to see a lot more of this. Now, as far as I know, all of these cases are asymptomatic cases. So they're not showing signs. They're not coughing. They're not fever. They're not on their deathbed or anything like that, which is great news. But still, obviously, if they have the virus, they have to be quarantined for a certain amount of time. And here's my fear. And this is just me being real. I still think we're going to have a football season. I still think we're going to have a full football season. My fear is that the closer we get to the date for kickoff, if you have at least one or two, even just one team, but multiple teams maybe, where this virus runs through the entire team, how does that affect everybody else? Because first of all, it'll affect the schedule, and also it'll just cause a public outcry as far as subjecting these kids to this virus just for football. And then what you'll have is people cancel. We're in cancel culture, and so we'll start seeing hopefully not, but maybe them start canceling games or maybe canceling seasons. That's my fear. That's the worst case scenario. I mean, where do you think about this?
Yeah. And I think that's been the fear all along, is that we're going to try and do these camps, get the kid. Like, I know Notre Dame's plan was to try and get the kids on campus as early as possible. They're in that little cocoon where they think they could control it, test, not let any outside, germs or whatever else in. But that's the concern. And I just don't know what you do if you're coming up on Friday before a Saturday game. There's all this money bet on the games and everything else, and you got a couple kids that test positive. What happens? And the other part of it is everybody going to have the same protocol? Or is this school by school? Do some institutions have better resources for testing, for doing all this than others? Are there going to be people who have asymptomatic positives and try and not let anybody know because they don't want this to blow up and be a big deal? I think this is just going to be a football season. Whatever it looks like, everybody needs to accept it's going to be atypical, totally weird. Roll with the punches. One week this, another week it could be different. I just think it's going to be a totally bizarre kind of thing where there's just going to be so many unknowns that we're just going to have to wait and see. But I just don't know what you do. If you get a team and the offensive line gets this, what do you do? Cancel a month worth of games? Like I just don't know what they're all going to do. And will it be uniformed or not?
Right.
I don't think it will be. I think everybody's going to do their own thing.
Yeah, I don't know, man. That's what worries me. Uh, I guess we'll find out that as far as you know, there's no Notre Dame players that have tested positive for it, though, right?
I have not heard that. And I wouldn't probably expect that until they all got back to campus. We're getting ready to do camp, start their testing when everybody gets back. But I haven't heard anything yet. But you look on Twitter now, and the last couple days, more and more teams are saying they're finding people that are positive. And the asymptomatic part is great for them because they're not laid up and severely ill. These guys are theoretically all in great shape. But the asymptomatic cases also should worry people a lot in some ways because you don't have some guy coughing, hey, stay away from them.
Yes,
you're asymptomatic. So you're hanging out with your teammates and this and that. And you could test negative today, positive tomorrow with no symptoms. I just think there's a lot of loose ends here. But the bottom line is there's so much money at stake. There's going to be a season somehow, some damn way, no matter how it looks.
That reminds me, before I do want to jump into Notre Dame now, because I'm sure people are tired of hearing about this, but I did see that the governor of Texas today said only approved sporting events for 50% capacity. And so for the NFL, you're talking about 40,000 whatever viewers per game. Some of these college stadiums like Texas A&M, 50,000 students. And I think everybody knows that, I'm supposed to be coming to your neck of the woods for the Clemson and Notre Dame game. We had a conversation about this off air. You asked me, was I a little bit worried about not being able to go? And so I got my tickets on Vivid Seats. Okay. But I bought them like right when they started selling the tickets is when I bought them. And I told you, because normally I've used Vivid Seats for Clemson games before, and they just give you a link or an email and you just print the ticket off. Like
I've used them before. I just don't appreciate the fees at the end.
Well, the fees were ridiculous.
Yeah,
fees are ridiculous. But that's what I was hoping I would get is just a link, and they'll print me my ticket, and I can just print it out and take it up, or just have them scan my cell phone at the gate like I've done before.
Right.
But that's not what this is. They're mailing me actual tickets, which to me, and you could correct me if I'm wrong here, that tells me that it's a season ticket holder selling me their tickets.
Yeah, so I believe Notre Dame's time frame on this is usually kind of, honestly, second, third week of August sometimes. Those get released. And I've been in your position where I'm sitting there at the mailbox Friday before a Saturday opening day game waiting for my tickets to arrive. But yeah, I don't know why, but for as long as I can remember, all those seem to come out in mid to late August, which is cutting it pretty darn close. I've never not gotten what I needed, but it's pretty darn close. Like you said, it can't be the day before because you're already going to be heading to Chicago
right.
Saturday. So that in your mailbox ain't going to do you any good.
No.
So, but I think you're covered. The way it looks to me is,
right,
unless we have another big blow up with the virus, the student section's going to get in. Your big money donors and boosters and faculty are going to get in.
The season ticket holders, definitely, right?
And then I think the chunk of 30,000 or so season ticket holders.
Wow, there's that many?
I think it's pretty close. I think it's pretty high.
Wow.
That may be a little high, but it's a good chunk. But the other issue is, I don't even know if all those people are still going to want to go. Half of those people are older. They might not feel that it's safe. Just because you say it's allowed doesn't mean everybody's going to be willing to dive in and do this. And so it's going to be bizarre. But if that's what they go with and you got them through a season ticket holder, you're golden.
Yeah. Well,
we might not be able to tailgate, but you'll be good to go to the game. They're going to change. That's all going to be messed up. They're going to change parking, tailgating, spacing, how you think about it. Everything has to be adjusted. Standing in line to get a hot dog's got to be adjusted. Going to take a leak has to be adjusted. Every aspect of this is bad for this virus, except for the fact that football's played outside. That's about the only part that's not bad for virus spreading in football.
Yeah, maybe I'm being selfish here, but I want that stadium to be packed.
I don't think it's going to happen.
I want to tailgate too.
I was looking forward to it. I just don't think that's going to happen. And Maybe it does. Maybe this all lightens up. We're just going to have to wait and see. And that's what makes everybody nervous, especially at Notre Dame. You got all these people that a lot of these people are from LA and they fly in the morning of the game to go to the Notre Dame game or whatever. These are people that have to plan this stuff out. They don't live right down the road. And this is going to screw up a lot of stuff. I think a lot of them season ticket holders aren't going to go, especially if they're scared, they're vulnerable age population. Right. This is going to be tricky.
Plus, what I heard is a lot of the season ticket holders for Notre Dame sell them to people like me for, an astronomical price and make a big profit off of it. I'm sure that happens everywhere, not just Notre Dame, but
yeah, well, you know how that all started. It was the Georgia game in 2017 when they took over our stadium.
Right.
And I think that was a unique confluence of events. 2016 was an absolute disgrace for Notre Dame. Totally bottomed out, and I think a lot of people were in wait and see mode, kind of fed up, and they're like, we're not going to pay all this money, go there and watch them kill us. Let's see what you got. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's why that happened. Since then, Notre Dame's been pretty solid. I don't expect that again to that extent, but I understand why it happened against Georgia in 2017. Everybody was pissed off and they're saying we're in wait and see mode. So, I'm not going to go there and take a beating and sit there like I like it. Prove to me you can handle the game first. So I don't expect that for this game. It's a big deal, man. People are already making plans for Clemson, Notre Dame, and it's going to be a shame because half of it isn't going to happen.
Oh, please don't say that. That makes me sad.
I know. I was picturing it too. I wanted you to be there, see what the stadium looked like at night. Everything's packed, like the tailgating scene. And maybe we're overdoing it and things will lighten up. I don't know.
So. I don't know. You're depressing me here.
I'm just trying to set my expectations.
I mean, listen, I've been waiting my entire life to travel to South Bend to watch Clemson play there. My entire life.
And then right when it happens, look at what's going on.
Yeah, you're killing me, Smalls.
Hey, I would rather expect the worst and then be pleasantly surprised than to act like everything's cool and then be devastated.
All right. Now I'm getting depressed. We're moving on. All right, but I know that you have some questions for me. This is something we wanted to go ahead and get out of the way. We wanted to go ahead and break that champagne bottle over the bow of this Always Pigskin Show boat. We're going to christen this thing, and we're going to get this thing right out of the way here. So a lot of my viewers, my viewers are from all over college football land. A lot of SEC fans in here, a lot of Big Ten fans in here, a lot of ACC fans in here. Just go down the list. Which conference does Notre Dame belong to? I want to put them in that category.
You know what conference they're in? The United States. That's their conference.
So
fly anywhere.
So
Pigskin. There's one team in the world that's ever played in Chicago, New York, and LA in the same year. It's Notre Dame, and they've done it 10 times. Okay. So our conference is America. That's a good start. It's a good way to have everybody hating me.
But there's already an American conference, and it's not even in the Power 5.
Oh, okay. Good angle. You know what I'm saying, though.
All right. So, but listen, the biggest knock on Notre Dame from non-Notre Dame fans is the fact that they're not in the conference. So how many Power 5 level schools are independent? You got Notre Dame, BYU.
I think you got like 6, right? You have Navy, right?
No,
Navy switched. Yeah, they joined.
Navy's in a group of 5 conference.
Here's the thing. So you have like 5 or 6 of them, but that really doesn't matter because it's not like we play all of them because we're all independent, because then that would basically make it a conference.
Yeah, I'm just talking about just in general. Like
I think there's 5 or 6.
Power 5 level schools?
No.
I think there's only 2. I think it's BYU and Notre Dame.
Yeah, that might be right.
And then the rest of them are like group of 5 level, like Navy, right?
Yeah.
All right. So people tend to hate. Well, people hate BYU for different reasons. That's for sure. We won't get into that either. That's a whole nother subject. That's very, very relatable to what's going on right now, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
But anyway, but Notre Dame, they're not that. They don't have that bad reputation as far as that goes. It is a Catholic school. We know that they've been independent since day one, right? They've never belonged to any sort of conference, right?
No. And
No.
but okay, so I want to make sure I want to do this week 1 because I understand this is a popular topic. Listen, I know Notre Dame's a target. There's lots of legitimate reasons to not like Notre Dame. I totally understand that. But the independence thing always comes up. It's a big deal to people. And 2018 is when it really blew up because Notre Dame made the playoff. That's when it really came to a head. And so this first episode, I just wanted to be totally transparent and just ask you straight up what it is about this people don't like, who they blame for it, like specifics. What do people think that because they're independent that it's an easier path to the playoff? And we could talk about the legitimacy of that or not. Like I'm asking you as a friend and a knowledgeable college football guy, what part of this people really have a problem with? And then I just want to openly talk about in my little Notre Dame world, here in independent land where that's all I've known. I love it. I would never want it to change, to kind of go over some of this stuff. And the first thing that I want to point out is if you're mad about Notre Dame being independent, you should be mad at Fielding Yost back in the 1920s when Notre Dame wanted to join what was then becoming the Big Ten. He wouldn't have it. He hated Rockne. Rockne hated him. And Fielding told all the other Big Ten schools, not only don't let Notre Dame join this conference, but refuse to schedule them at all, thus requiring Notre Dame to independently schedule any team anywhere they could just to complete a schedule. And in the long run, that ended up being the best thing that ever could happen for Notre Dame, because you ended up going to New York, building that Irish Catholic fan base, playing Army up there, going all the way to Southern Cal, finding fans there. So in the long run, those people trying to force Notre Dame to be inconvenienced into independence is the very reason that Notre Dame ended up growing and has this national fan base, a lot of whom never even stepped foot on campus or went to school there. So there was a time Notre Dame was interested in joining a conference. They weren't interested in having us. Fast forward 100 years, now everybody's mad about it. So I want to make sure we have the history of that very clear.
I'm clear on the history. Now, if you want my opinion on this Notre Dame independent situation versus the public group think about the Notre Dame independent situation, those are two different things. And I have my pulse on both of them. I mean, I obviously have my pulse on my opinion, but I think I understand, or at least I hear what people say, what makes them angry about Notre Dame's independence. Not angry, but sort of bitter about it. But my feelings about it are completely different. And my feelings about it aren't necessarily in line with what most people think. And it's certainly not, I don't blame Notre Dame for it at all. I get, this is an ACC issue. Since Clemson's in the ACC, I have a serious problem with the way the ACC is dealing with Notre Dame. Two different things. But to answer your question, basically, there's people out there that think that it's not fair, especially in the college football playoff era. Now, you'll probably notice as a Notre Dame fan that people have always sort of given you a hard time for being independent, but it's exponentially increased since the playoff era started.
Well, and yeah, 2018 was when this all, 2018, that's what all this, when it all started, really to ramp up, because Notre Dame actually made the playoff. How they performed in that game didn't help their argument, but I would contend your results in the game doesn't necessarily mean you didn't earn your way into it. Those are two different things to me.
Sure, I think they did earn their way into it.
Yeah, those are two different. That's one thing I always set straight with people. If you want to say Notre Dame gets in the big game and then loses, yeah, why do you think I have no hair left? Like, obviously, that's factual, but that doesn't necessarily mean they didn't earn their way into said game. Those are two different things I always go back and forth with. But the main question I have is, like, who are people mad at for this? Are they mad at Notre Dame for taking a deal that was offered to them? Maybe you should be mad at the NCAA for allowing Notre Dame to do this. That's fine. If you want to say, hey, make a rule this year, Notre Dame, conferences only. If you're not in one all the way, not this half-ass ACC agreement. If you're not in all the way, you're not eligible. If they do that, then you force Notre Dame's hand.
Yeah, see, that's not the problem. Or the first of all, that's not going to happen. What you just said is not going to happen.
Right.
But here's the thing that people say about Notre Dame, and this is all the normal talking points that you hear all the time. It's not fair they don't have to play a conference championship game because that could get them, if they lose their conference championship game, that can get them kicked out of the playoffs and get a more deserving team in there. That's one of the points that they have. That's probably really the main point. Also, the fact that they sort of get to pick and choose their schedule in comparison to other teams that are in conferences. They have either 8 or 9 conference games, and they get to pick and choose a couple of games. Notre Dame pretty much gets to pick all of their games.
Okay, so I'll address both of those. Number one is, before Notre Dame was even in the playoff discussion in 2018, the precedent has already been set by 2 other teams that didn't win their conferences and still made the playoff.
Yes.
Okay, so I want to be clear. That's an important determining factor to me. It's not like Notre Dame rolled along at 12-0 in 2018, broke that mold. 2 other teams were able to do this before them. Now, you could argue those teams were better than Notre Dame, and I wouldn't disagree knowing who they were. So the precedent was already set that you didn't have to win a conference to be in it. That's one thing. Number 2 is some of that flexibility in scheduling has changed with the ACC agreement, which you're obviously well aware of. They wanted to join so all the non-high revenue generating teams have a nice conference there, share in everything there. Academically, the ACC lines up pretty well with Notre Dame. That's an arrangement they were very, very comfortable with. But for football, Notre Dame loves their independence. It's what built the program. They never want to give it up unless they're absolutely forced to. And I don't know if that'll happen. Maybe it will happen if they do these mega conferences everybody's talking about, or if the Power Fives break away from the NCAA, which I've read about. Maybe that would change. Now, my other issue is when you say, oh, Notre Dame gets to pick and choose who they play, that comes off to me like they're scheduling cupcakes. And I have all the stats right here about their strength of schedule that show that's not the case. So if you want to argue 12 games to 13 or whatever, that's fine. But like in 2018, they had the 13th toughest strength of schedule, which I think is relatively respectable. And they played Michigan, Stanford, Virginia Tech. Navy's not good, but they're tricky. Florida State, USC, a Syracuse team that was ranked 12th when we played them. And oh, by the way, I also didn't mention the 2 conference division winners Notre Dame beat. That's supposed to be this big deal. Excuse me. And that's Northwestern and Pitt that both won their divisions. So in that regard, Notre Dame at 12-0 with all those brand names, even though they were a little down, then beating the 2 conference division winners, 12-0 Notre Dame's going to get in. The interesting thing is a 1-loss Notre Dame. 12-0, I don't think's a real question. 1 loss is where this gets really interesting. Yes. I do not believe 1-loss Notre Dame gets in over 1-loss Power 5 with an extra game. That's going to be the tricky part.
Now we're getting into it.
That's the tricky part.
Because people like you, and a lot of other Notre Dame fans, they value their independence, and I get it. It's a traditional thing. You like to play your traditional Stanford, USC, Navy, the whole thing. Yep. I get all that. First of all, I actually think it's entertaining that Notre Dame travels all across the country from coast to coast and plays everybody and anybody. I think that's great. But as a Notre Dame fan, though, how many times do you have to go 11-1 and get left out of the playoffs before you're starting to say, hey, maybe we should just conform to what everybody else wants and join a conference?
This is something I talk about all the time on my show, and I tell people it would be an somewhat easier path joining a conference. It's more concrete. Your path to the playoffs a lot more direct and concrete when you're in a conference structure. So what I always say is under this 4-team format, 12-0 Notre Dame's always going to get in. The schedule over the last 5 years, it's averaged 15th, 2 times in the top 10. The schedule's tough enough. They play a lot of brand names, whether those teams are up or down. But with the one loss, I just don't see Notre Dame jumping another Power 5 with one loss and an extra game. Even if it's against an FCF's bottom feeder, I still don't see the committee ever making that leap. And like you said, let's see how many years that takes. I think it would take 100. I'm telling you, they're not going to give up independence no matter what, unless they're forced. And if they do it, people are going to look at it as a concession. We couldn't win the way we did all those years ago when we were good. Like, Notre Dame people will lose their mind. Joining a conference full time does not interest me at all. It seems boring. We don't want to play the same people every year. It just seems boring. But you're right. One loss, Notre Dame's out almost every single year, except if you have multiple 2-loss Power 5 champions. That changes it. Maybe if, say, Notre Dame went 11-1 next year with a field goal losing game against Clemson, that's their best argument, is to lose to a great team barely and have one loss. But I think Notre Dame's out. I've been telling Notre Dame people that forever. One loss, Notre Dame is probably out. We're just going to have to deal with it. That's the path we chose.
So you personally, you can't speak for the whole Notre Dame fan base. You can only speak for John. But to John, what's more important to you? Valuing your independence and playing all the traditional teams that you play, or making the playoffs and having a better chance at winning a national championship? Which one? I mean, which outweighs the other to you?
I value the independence. It will feel less to me to win something feeling like we conceded we couldn't do it the old way. I would not like that. It would feel less to me. That's how, I'm just telling you, that's how deep the independence connection runs.
Yeah, that's deep, man. That is deep.
I'm telling you, man, like that. But you got to understand, it isn't just football. You're thinking back to a time when Irish Catholics weren't looked upon favorably in this country. Rockney brings the train to town, and all the Irish Catholics rally around this gritty, physical, tough, fighting Irish team that represented them in the new land. And there's a lot of emotions that are not football related that tie into the independence that we don't want to give up. It's going to be a harder path. I know that. And it's just the way it is. Think about it, though, Pigskin. Notre Dame's got to go perfect. They cannot lay an egg anywhere and have a one-game safety net. They got to be perfect. So if you hate Notre Dame, watch every week, and then once they lose their first game, feel better about it because they're probably out.
First of all, you know where I stand on this. I'm Irish Catholic. Grew up Irish Catholic. I've told you this before. I had family members that graduated from Notre Dame. My grandfather on my mother's side and my uncle on my mother's side both graduated from Notre Dame. So, and aside from that, I mean, there's a lot of Irish pride in my family. And, growing up as a kid, my parents got divorced when I was very young. I was 2 years old. So I would go spend a couple of weekends a month with my dad, and my father and I bonded through sports. We watched baseball, we watched football, everything. That's what we did together when I was a kid. And of course, when I was a kid, it was in the 80s. And there was only three major sporting events in South Carolina that were shown every week. Clemson football, South Carolina football, and guess what? Notre Dame football.
Good old NBC.
Yeah, good old NBC. So I saw a lot of Notre Dame football growing up. My parents were both Notre Dame fans. Now my mom is still a huge Notre Dame fan, even though she had several children that went to Clemson. My dad, I think, has transitioned to more of a Clemson in South Carolina fan. He's got kids that went to both schools than Notre Dame, but he still likes Notre Dame. I never really, got into Notre Dame. I was well down the Clemson rabbit hole as a very young child to ever jump on another team's bandwagon or whatever, or just be a fan of two teams. I've never been a two-teamer type of person.
Yeah.
But I completely understand the Irish pride. Even though I'm a Clemson guy, I understand it. But I also understand the fan side of it. And as a fan, and this is just me, I mean, you just told me you value independence over the likelihood of winning a championship. And that seems to be the norm for a lot of Irish fans. For me, though, I would rather have a better chance at winning a title because you know how hard it is to go 12-0. I mean, it might only happen once every 10 or 15 years if you're lucky.
That's my biggest argument to people who hate Notre Dame making the playoff. I say in this format, they got to go undefeated, deal with it once every 10 years. Throw us a bone, if it happens once every 10 years. But I don't know how else to say it genuinely and honestly. What the scenario you're describing to me feels like a concession, saying we can't win the way we always did and the way that built the university into what it is. I'm not talking about on-field results. We haven't won anything since '88, but I just mean the brand, the money they have, how the national,
here's the problem. And this is the issue, is that in today's college football world, it's not 1980 or 1990 anymore. It's way harder to win a national championship as it is because, back when Notre Dame was, the premier team that everybody knew about back in the 80s and 90s, it was a lot easier. There was maybe 3 teams that really had a chance to win a national title every year. Now there's 10.
Yeah, no, here's the other thing. I've thought about this a lot. When Lou Holtz was recruiting Randy Moss to Notre Dame before he got in trouble and they couldn't honor his commitment, his biggest draw to Notre Dame was he told Lou Holtz, I'm going to be on TV every damn week on your NBC contract. That was appealing to him. Some of those advantages Notre Dame had over those decades, those are going away. If your team's any good at all, you're on TV now for every week. So a lot of those little advantages over the years, it's becoming harder and harder to do. So I totally agree with that. The modernization, the digital age, 80 channels that have football games now. Some of them, it's like the Lifetime channel. Oh, here's this football game, and it's definitely getting harder. I just don't know how else to say it. It will feel dirty to me winning it, conceding we couldn't do it the way that built the university. That's just built into me.
I know. I could tell it's built into you and a lot of other Irish fans. And I get, it's hard. I get it, I guess. I mean,
Pigskin, I have no interest in being in a conference full time. I just, we've had series recently or scheduled coming up with Georgia, Oklahoma, Michigan State, Ohio State, Alabama, Texas.
But why is independence so important to Notre Dame in football, but not other sports? Because you're in the ACC and in pretty much every other sport.
Well, I think the one big reason is Notre Dame football does not need financial assistance from anywhere. They don't need to share conference TV money to get a piece. They don't need that. So they can pretty much stand on their own in football and do what they want to do and not have to worry about money. That's never going to be an issue. And the rise of that football program with Newt Rockne is really what built the university from being a regional small school near a lake in the middle of Indiana into this national brand. And I just think that runs so deep, nobody wants to give it up.
I think that the school stands to make more money in the long run by winning titles than they do staying independent.
That's a fair argument. I don't know how else to tell you.
And it also help with recruiting too.
That's a good point. I can't get off that. I'll just feel dirty about it. It just wouldn't feel like Notre Dame football. It's a concession none of us want to make.
I know.
And it's hard because Pigskin, you know how frustrating it is to play a season and we lose one game and I'm pretty much like, oh, there it goes. There it goes. There goes your chance. They have no safety net. They got to go 12-0.
So we know what you and pretty much the vast majority of Notre Dame fans want to stay. Do you think it will stay that way?
The only way they're forced into it is whatever governing body does the playoff part. If they say, this is getting too complicated, you have to be in a conference full time to do it. That's the only way I see it happening. But like you said, Notre Dame's good for ratings. They fill up opposing stadiums. They're good for all that stuff. That they're just not going to force their hand, or they would have done it the first time when they were setting all this up. They would have said, listen, Notre Dame, we're doing this to make it, what it is for everybody. You got to be all in or you're out. If they didn't do it then, I don't really see why they would moving forward. Unless they do those conferences, break out of the NCAA and create their own new mega conferences, maybe that changes it. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you my final thoughts on this. And I touched on this at the beginning of this conversation, and I'll just end it here. My problem isn't with Notre Dame being independent, because I believe any school can make the decision to do whatever they want to do. If it hurts Notre Dame's chances of getting in the playoffs, that's on them.
Yep.
And they're welcome to do whatever they want to do. My problem is not with Notre Dame being independent. I actually kind of respect it in certain ways, because like I said, you got to go 12-0. Pretty much. That's really your only option. And if you can do that, you deserve to be in there. I don't care what anybody else says. My problem is not with Notre Dame. It's with the ACC. Because the ACC is allowing Notre Dame to bend them over and shove it right in their rear end.
Yep.
Because they're playing.
Right.
They're playing. Right. What are they? An average of 5 ACC teams a year.
Yep.
They're not splitting revenue with the ACC. The only way this helps the ACC at all is when Notre Dame comes to their school to play, they might sell more tickets. That 1 week of the year, whatever week that is.
Yep. I totally agree with you, because what Notre Dame was able to essentially do is throw into the pool all the non-big revenue generating sports and then join in for that. But the big money maker, they want to keep it. So I totally agree with you. So then let me ask you, what the hell's wrong with the ACC leadership?
I don't know.
Why did they agree to that?
That's a great question. You know why? Because here's what I would say. First of all, I love the fact that Clemson and Notre Dame are playing each other, whatever it is, an average of every 5 years. That's great. I love it. I'm fine with that. But look, man, if it were up to me, if I were running the show at the ACC, I mean, first of all, they haven't shown me a reason that's financially beneficial with this relationship, other than, like I said, you're coming to the one school a year or 2 schools a year, whatever it is. I would tell them, look, if you want to be a part of the ACC in any sport, not just football, you're going to be all in or you're all out. If not, go somewhere else. Go try to be independent, because the Big Ten's not giving you that deal. And I think probably the Big Ten would be the only one that even fit geographically, but in this, maybe the Big 12, because you're sort of right in the middle of the country there. But yeah, Big 12's not giving you that deal. I mean, who's giving you the deal other than the ACC? I just don't get it. Yeah,
I don't. Now, for Notre Dame, that's a total win, because they're able to pull all the football stuff, still schedule out of the 5 ACC committed games, schedule whoever we want. You're going to have USC, Navy, Stanford, and then schedule your Big Ten team or whoever. It's going to be Wisconsin this year. So I don't understand it either, other than maybe the ACC did the math and all these other sports, it all adds up to be slightly beneficial for them. But I'm totally with you. I would have went to Notre Dame and said, no. We're not taking all your non-big revenue generating sports and then you keep the football pool. I would have said no too. So I don't know what happened with that negotiation. But Notre Dame ended up in a pretty good spot. And same thing with the TV deal with NBC. Not so much now because everybody's on TV, but in the old days, it was like, well, that's unfair. Well, why are you mad at Notre Dame for that? Be mad at NBC for offering it.
Exactly.
Notre Dame can only take what's offered. And it's a good deal for them. They control everything. So it's not really on them. You would take it too if they offered you your own free TV channel.
It's Notre Dame gets to be independent and they get to choose to be have a loose affiliation with the conference.
And by the way, that NBC broadcast, you got Doug Flutie there from Boston College, who every Notre Dame person hates. So we don't even like the coverage because Doug Flutie's on it and he offers nothing insightful. So everybody hates him, but it's a cushy deal. They've had it for a long time. It ain't going away.
I don't think that deal with the network is as lucrative as it used to be, though.
Yeah, things have shifted. But you know what's nice, man? Every week for Notre Dame home game, you just know what you're going to get. You know what channel. You're not looking around. Oh, this isn't in my region. None of that stuff happens. It's like the Cubs on WGN when we were growing up.
You're definitely a creature
Same thing.
of habit and tradition. We've established that today. So
it's true, and that's why I'm miserable all the time, because I refuse to adapt.
You don't like change, do you, John?
Not with this stuff. Listen, the dream for a guy like me, I realize we're not going to have the Clemson roster, the Georgia roster, the Alabama roster.
That's the next thing we're going to talk about.
I realize that. It's just not feasible or realistic. But the goal is to show you could get some smart kids in there, run the table one year, show you could still win it as an independent. If that happens before I croak, I'll be happy. That's the goal.
That's a perfect segue into our next line of questioning here before we end the show. Got a few minutes left. So one of the main things I hear from Notre Dame fans is we're at a disadvantage because of our academic standards. Now, first of all, I do recognize that there is a higher academic standard at a handful of schools more than other schools. And so I completely understand that. My issue is hasn't Notre Dame's academic standards always been high, though, throughout history?
So what you've had is, over these decades, certain leadership, whether it be from the top of the university, certain coaches, were able to get a little bit of leeway. Lou Holtz was able to get a little bit of leeway on academics when he made his run in 1988 and won. It got a little bit much for the higher ups. They started giving Lou a hard time about it. Next thing you know, Lou Holtz is out of Notre Dame. So there's been some ebbs and flows with the academic restrictions. However, with their test admission scores and all that stuff, there's really not much flexibility because there is no general studies at Notre Dame. You could, if you tried to get a kid in, with a lower test score, he's not going to get through the classes because it's not built that way.
Are you telling me, though, I just want to interrupt real quick. Are you telling me, though, that they make zero exceptions for admission for football players versus the general population of students?
No, I am not saying they make zero. I'm saying it's nothing compared to these factories. That's why I want to be clear. They do make some exceptions, but it isn't, come to North Carolina and then we make a fake class and then you get your degree. That doesn't happen there. The other issue is Notre Dame can't oversign. They don't have these junior college feeder programs. They're not able to kind of support their system with that extra leverage. They can't do any of that, or they will not do any of that.
I will tell you this, just to defend Clemson. I know you're not taking a shot at Clemson, but just to defend Clemson, they don't take junior college players transfers at all. Never have.
And I don't think I knew that. I wasn't singling that out. Yeah. I'm just saying they don't have that kind of flexibility. And so the classwork there's legit. It's real. The players talk about how hard it is. It's just another dynamic you have is everybody's not always on the same page at Notre Dame. You have a lot of the academic side of Notre Dame that in some ways resent some of the athletic side and the attention they get or the perceived breaks they get. So you don't have this teacher that's awesome that's going to cover up for all these football players that don't have to do anything. There's sometimes some contention between the academic side, the athletic side, when it comes to discipline. There's always a little bit of friction behind the scenes there. They don't have a unified way to get everything on the same rail here.
That's interesting too, because I think that happens at some level at every school. Probably Notre Dame and maybe Georgia Tech, some of these other schools more than others, Stanford, places like that. But that happens on some level at every school. As a matter of fact, there was a couple of months ago when we were right in the heat of this pandemic situation. There was a professor at Clemson that made a public statement that said he thought it was very irresponsible of the university to even entertain having a football season this year. Now, the irony of this is that these professors, these high, they consider themselves highfalutin in academics, and all they really care about is, academics. If it weren't for the football teams at Clemson and Notre Dame and a lot of these other schools, these guys wouldn't have the salaries they have. So are you willing to give up your salary for not having a football season this year, sir? I guarantee you're not.
Yep. And I say that all the time when things come up at Notre Dame. I say, if it wasn't for their historical success on the football field, none of this stuff would be what it is at Notre Dame. Your fancy Notre Dame degree wouldn't guarantee a $120,000 job the day you walk out of there. Mm-hmm. So, a lot of that's built into the history. But it's interesting, man. I got a lot of, even some of my cousins that just were at Notre Dame recently, some of them borderline resented some of these athletes and thinking they are walking around like they're, something special and that they don't belong in the same classes. And there is some of that struggle. Discipline's where it really comes in. Notre Dame, they don't sweep things under the rug. We had a tutor help too much with the paper a few years ago. Notre Dame doesn't wait for the NCAA. They go right there and tell them it happened right away and, wipe all their games off the winning ledger there. So it's tricky with all those standards. So I'm not saying there's no breaks for admissions, but Notre Dame's just a hard school to get through. You can't just skate through and major in football. That does not exist there. Not an option.
Yeah. No, I get it. I get it. But so being that it's slightly harder to recruit at a place like Notre Dame for several reasons. I mean, first of all, geographically, that's another one. The academic standards, the weather. If you're an 18-year-old kid, you're a premier college. Even if you meet the standards academically, would you rather go down to Clemson where it's 80 degrees in March? Or would you want to go to South Bend where it's, the snow doesn't melt till June type of deal. So you have a lot of things working against you. Now, having said all that, as far as the recruiting goes, the main thing that recruits to Notre Dame is the brand. It's a very recognizable brand. And obviously, if you don't make it to the NFL and you make it through there and you get your degree, like you said, you're pretty much guaranteed $100,000 job out of college. And that's pretty much true for across the board. Your success rate in the business world or the professional world is higher than the majority of places in the country.
Yeah.
But having said that, are you still pleased with the way that they're recruiting based on all of those factors?
I think it's been good, but it isn't good enough to get over the hump, right? I think there's these tiers in college football, and Notre Dame's firmly planted themselves the last few years, not in the elite, but in that cluster of pretty darn good, very darn good. And what it takes to get over that hump is, I don't know, a couple guys like maybe a guy you've heard of, maybe Will Shipley, something like that would be nice. Like there's these minor victories that you got to win when you're Notre Dame to help get you over the hump.
Yeah. In other words, you got to the guys that do meet the requirements and the guys that are elite players like Will Shipley,
get them.
You got to get them.
Pigskin. That's my big thing with Notre Dame recruiting. I always talk about Notre Dame's not getting the hat flippers on signing day. That is not our ball game. We're not going to win that race. We don't even try in a lot of cases. Where Notre Dame's sweet spot are the really smart, academic, good kids, people from families that value the faith aspect of it. That's a big draw for those families, and good players. So like you said, when you got a guy that hits all those boxes with no red flags, those are the guys we got to land because you're already missing out on the hat flippers, Mm-hmm. And so they've done a really solid job of recruiting. I just think it takes even so much as a couple more elite guys on one side of the ball or the other to start winning one of these games we're not supposed to win that we've been losing. So it's been solid, but not good enough to get us over the hump.
In my opinion, what's the recruiting class looking like for 2021? So I know it's really early still. But.
Yeah, here's what's interesting about that. Kelly came out and said, for 2021, we really think we could change some things and approach that 7, 8, 9, 10 range for a final position. I personally don't see it. We had a decommitment. A guy flipped to Oklahoma, lost out on Will Shipley. You mentioned the location. COVID nailed Notre Dame bad. They're in a weird spot where a lot of people got to fly in to visit. All of those visits. Will Shipley was supposed to be on campus.
Yeah, that was one of those things. Yeah, he didn't.
Couldn't happen.
Yeah.
So he never got to walk around, feel what it's like, experience the vibe.
Right.
So the COVID really did hurt Notre Dame with those visits, the location. I always joke, you got to get these kids on campus when the weather's warm. You can't bring some Southern kid up there when it's minus 20. You got the wind chill and the snow blowing off the lake. Like you're not going to win that battle.
Yeah, but if you know that, how you would think the coaching staff would know this?
I know, but ultimately, if that's what's making your college decision, you're probably not a great Notre Dame fit either. If the weather's that big of an impact, or the way the girls look, all these things we hear all the time about Notre Dame.
But still, wouldn't you rather, I mean, listen, we're talking about 17, 18-year-old kids here. I mean, 17-year-old, 18-year-old kids, even if they're really smart, they're still 17 to 18-year-old kids. Your brain isn't even fully developed yet. So little things like that, like the weather.
Mine still isn't. I'm 35.
But little things like the weather and the girls and all that, those things might play a part in, choosing between Notre Dame and somewhere else.
Yeah, I think you're right. But what you end up with is Notre Dame's starting to refine their recruiting a little bit to where they're finding these pipelines at some of these schools where they get it. A lot of them come from these private Catholic high schools. They're already kind of into that. The families are into it. Notre Dame pushes the 4 for 40, 4 years for the next 40 years of your career. It's a very legitimate recruiting angle. The NFL doesn't work out. Great. You're an accountant with a Notre Dame degree making bank.
Right.
You could do a lot worse in life.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, man. Well, I think it's we've been on for over an hour now. I want to apologize. Well, I don't want to apologize to the viewers because they're here. Thank you for showing up. It wasn't meant to be live, though. So I want to apologize to you for that.
Well, whatever.
And we'll get that corrected for next week.
Maybe it'll still probably come out when you originally put it, too. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know how I've never used this StreamYard thing before. So, you live and you learn. This was a sort of a, not only the first episode, but a sort of a test on the way we're going to do things here. I think I got it pretty much figured out. I had some little kinks to work out, but I think the show went great. And I'm looking forward to doing this every week for the next 3 months, maybe something like that.
Yeah, sounds good to me. Also, just so you don't forget, remember, Notre Dame and Clemson play again 2022 and 2023.
I know.
And actually, Notre Dame also plays Ohio State both of those years, too.
So you want to talk?
The Notre Dame doesn't schedule anybody.
Yeah. You can't talk about stricter schedule when you're playing Clemson and Ohio State in the same calendar year.
Yeah, both
same
years
season.
back to back, too.
Wow. Yeah.
So that's going to be.
So let me ask you this: just based on those two things, are you playing both those games? Is it like you're playing Clemson home and Ohio State away, or vice versa, or how's that working out?
Yeah, I think they rotate home and home. Yeah.
So So you're not going to Clemson and to Columbus the same year?
I don't believe so. I think it's flipped. But I know the one, I forget which year it is, but it's game one right out of the gates at the Horseshoe. I think it's 2022. Game one right out of the gates, the Horseshoe, Notre Dame, Ohio State. I'm scared as hell what could happen. But that is a hell of a first week.
You want to talk about, but listen, if you will lose that game, your season might be over.
That's what I'm telling you. What am I going to do the rest of the year for my show? We're already out of it. Week one. This is why it's hard, man. I get depressed after one loss.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see. First of all, I think that's great for college football to see Clemson and Notre Dame playing. I think it's great for college football to see Ohio State and Notre Dame playing. I mean,
yeah.
And people can say what they want about Notre Dame, but whenever Notre Dame comes to their school, it's sold out every time. So they can say what they want.
10 times Notre Dame has sold out an away game, and that's like double over the second place team. So that's what I always go back and forth with. Notre Dame's irrelevant. Well, then why did you sell out your stadium to come see us? Because we want to see you lose. But then that means we're not irrelevant.
Yeah. Why did I pay $450 per ticket for me and my wife to go in 2015 when they came to Clemson? Well, because it's Notre Dame. That's why.
Right. Yeah. So but those games are going to be really exciting. So even no matter what happens with this, maybe you'll have an opportunity in a few more years, or I could go down your way for a game.
Yeah, come on down, man.
So
I'm surprised you didn't come down in 2015. There's a lot of Notre Dame people there.
Yeah, and I had some friends there, and they asked me if I wanted to go, and I said, I have a feeling this is going to end bad for me, and I'm not driving back in the car hating everybody in my life the whole way, so you guys go.
I did say that today. We were sitting, there was a Notre Dame couple of guys sitting right next to us, and they were cool. I'm not a dick to opposing fans or anything.
Yeah.
So I was cool to them. But at the end of the game, it was a heartbreaking loss for Notre Dame. It happened, the last play. I looked over to him. I said, "Man, it'd be a long drive back to Indiana, ain't it?"
And that's what I knew I was not going to be in the damn mood for. So I just said, you know what? If we win it, I'll be just as happy drunk at my house. And if we lose it, I don't have to ride in the car through a hurricane and be miserable the whole time.
Yeah. All right, man. Listen, it's been a great show. The Always Pigskin Show with Pigskin Pete and my man John, Always Irish. Hope you guys all enjoy this. Look forward to this every single week for the next few months at least. John, it's been a pleasure. You're a scholar and a gentleman, sir.
I don't know about either of those, but this has been fun.
All right, man. I'll see you next week, brother.
Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
See ya.